I'm sure a lot of you people were watching Irma and some of the things I made over here, but we're going to be talking about the why the old Saffir-Simpson wind scale should be scrapped and the new pressure-based Saffir-Simpson scale should be implemented here. Well, first, my new made-up scale is 1,005 millibars, and 990 is a tropical storm. 975 to 990 is a Category 1 hurricane. 960 to 975 is a Category 2. 945 to 960 should be a Category 3. 930 to 945 should be a Category 4, and below 930 is a Category 5. Let's think of it this way. Hurricane Sandy, which caused a lot of destruction back in 2012, was only a Category 1, but it caused massive, it was a really costly storm because of the huge field of wind and rain. And not only that, it was a lot of snow, and it was a hybrid storm, but it was like a Category 1. So if we were to put Sandy on a new one, it would have been a Category 4, despite only having 75 miles per hour wind, because that was about 940 millibars was what Sandy was, and I think the strongest ever was a Category 2 wind-wise, but it would have been a Category 4 if it wasn't the new scale, depending on what it is here. It was first thought that it was going up the East Coast, and then it was going to go towards Miami, Florida. Now it's forecast to scrape the West Coast, with the potentially of the eye of the hurricane staying off the water. Now, some people would think, the worst case scenario is hitting Miami and cutting across Central Florida. That would be seeming the worst case scenario. Not exactly. The worst case scenario for Florida would be actually for the hurricane to scrape the western coastline. Now let's put it this way. The right side of the eye wall on the forward movement is really the damaging part of the storm. That's the windy part of the storm. That's where most of the wind fields are at. Now don't assume that it's a sigh of relief. It's 125 miles per hour. What really happened was that the wind field has actually spread out towards a bigger location. This is because, this causes a longer duration hurricane wind event, and that could, let's think of Sandy. It was 75 miles per hour, maximum sustained wind, but it still caused extensive damage. So this is what it is here. The reason why we would rather have the eye hit Miami and then stay on land for the mid-Florida than to have it scrape to the western coast is this. If the track would have been towards the center of the Florida Peninsula, only the right half of the Florida Peninsula would be, and even that, it wouldn't even go up the, and even that, it wouldn't, make it up the things. It would probably be maybe more about the southern coast storm and anything else here. But if it scraped the western part of Florida, we're talking the entire Florida Peninsula, talking devastation, because that means that the entire Florida Peninsula is on the right side, which is the damaging part of the storm. We also have a lot of storm surge, particularly in the western coast of Florida, and even some storm surge on the eastern part of this one here. I've seen that the millibars have gone up, which means that there's lessening of effect of the storm surge. But the millibars could go down again to maybe my Category 5, which is below 930 millibars, which could cause a greater storm surge in that location, particularly near the eye, and also to the south of the eye, the storm. Now the other difference is that there's going to have a lot of the winds going to be northerly winds. Particularly the beginning of its northeasterly winds and northerly winds, and then southerly winds. What am I saying here? It's going to be increasing southerly winds. First, it's going to be southeasterly winds, and then it's going to be a south, and then a southwesterly wind. I can't just get these things out here. So the peninsula is going to have southerly winds of prolonged hurricane force, and that's where I have a family that lives in the Villages, which is to the left. It's just northwest of Orlando, but he's on the peninsula, and they're saying that they're boarding up. Hopefully, they will go into a sturdy shelter. Yeah. So, if it stays on the Florida coast, then I believe that the Panhandle of Florida, as well as Georgia and Alabama, should pay attention, and maybe even more northward towards maybe Tennessee, maybe extreme northeastern Mississippi. So yeah, that was the latest on Irma. It's going to scrape the western coast. Perhaps that it may be making landfall towards Fort Myers or Tampa, and it might, with a chance that it could, hopefully would not be the case, having the eye stay on open water, which is the worst case, which means that it can cause all the devastation while maintaining the strength. This is the latest. JD out, and hopefully Florida's will stay safe during the storm, and hopefully they've heeded the warnings.